right? I mean, if you really look at his background, he was from Iowa, and he was an agricultural scientist. I mean, he was trying to figure out why do certain farmers, adopt, new technologies, and why is that certain people don't normally do it. He was not even an economist. In fact, he was more of a scientist, and he was trying to figure out, when they were trying to really, there were a lot of innovations which were going on at Iowa State University, and as you all know, I'm sure Manisha will know, Iowa is a state where there's a lot of agricultural produce. I mean, in fact, they grow a lot of corn. Indiana is another state, Wisconsin and so on, the Midwest that we are talking about. And these people are trying to figure out, why is that certain innovations which were, which are coming out of the labs were not being used by farmers. There are farmers who take it very quickly, and there are some people who don't normally. I don't know what happens to this mic, I guess. I'll just put off the column mic. I mean, very distracting. So he was, that's when they started this study, and then they found. Now, if you really look at it, you have the typical bell-shaped curve. I think all of you must be knowing there's people called the innovators, then they're called the early adopters, the late adopters, and then the laggards, and so on. That was a theory that he started off in 1961, and he said typically people look at, there's always the economic logic saying that as long as a new product which comes, which has benefits, better benefits, and it costs less, that product has to succeed. Typically, the net benefits that a new product comes along, and if you're able to show the net benefits over the incumbent product, people will automatically adopt. This was a common understanding for almost about 40 years. This theory went on to become a very, very popular theory, where they said as long as you show the consumer that you have, if you launch a new product, if it's got better benefits and it costs less, then people will automatically take it. And believe me, this was a notion which was there for 40 years, and then later on somebody came out and said this is not true. People don't act so logically nor rationally. In fact, consumers think completely differently. I mean, this is where I think there was another economist. In fact, he was not even an economist, he was a psychologist. His name is Daniel Kahneman. He is from Princeton, and he won a Nobel Prize in 2002 for a theory called the prospect theory. I don't know how many of you have heard about this theory called prospect theory. Ma'am, I think you're in economics, right? I mean, you must have heard about this theory, prospect theory. I mean, I think it's a very interesting theory where for the first time they said, why do consumers don't buy? And they said it's not simply economic rationale which makes people buy. If that is the case, then I think there would a lot of entrepreneurs who would have really hit the gold mine. I mean, in the first place. I mean, like for instance, people talk about Webvan. Webvan was one particular internet site, and this was at the height of the .com, bubble that we're talking about, where these people, very experienced retailers, not that these guys are novices, they were very, very experienced retailers who understood the business, and there were investors who also know this particular business, and they spent a lot of invested, millions of dollars to get that particular, venture going. And they found that there were no takers for this particular thing at all. This is typically online groceries, and people said, if I'm going to launch this, it's going to be a massive hit. And then, all these people are experienced, not that, they're stupid or very, new people new to the business. They were all experienced veterans in this particular business, and they all thought maybe this is an idea which the time has come, and the minute I'm going to launch this, it's going to be a major, massive hit. Believe me, it just flopped. Then people realized, there are a lot of benefits that this particular product, this particular service offers. People should have seen the obvious benefits of this particular product and, or this service, and they should have really taken it on, and then they find that, there are no takers at all. And this must have been repeated in many other ventures where the entrepreneur feels that, it's a fantastic product. I mean, this is the best mousetrap that I could ever think of, and I should be making $1 million out of this, and I suddenly find that there are no takers at all. Now, this is where I think, people started trying to figure out why is that people don't buy. I mean, and this theory, the prospect theory I'll just talks about a completely different notion where people normally don't look at all these decisions very rationally, but they look at it in a very different sense, which is called the psychological costs and benefits, which I'll talk about, and which says that people, if you show the benefits, people are not going to see the benefits immediately. In fact, they're going to underweigh that benefits. But whenever there is a price that they need to pay to really get a new product, they overestimate that particular cost. So people underestimate the benefits and overestimate the costs, and people say, oh, I'm not going to take the risk. People inherently, are averse to risk, and if it's a new product, there's always that feeling that I have to forego a lot of things just to get a small amount of benefits, and they say that the costs are too much and it outweighs the benefits, so I'm not going to take it. The economic rationale is most of the new innovative products are supposed to offer enormous benefits, and it's going to cost a very little for a consumer to really adopt to the new product. It never happens. In fact, the reverse happens. People really look at the costs and the losses that they're going to incur by taking on a new product, and then they say, what are the benefits? Oh, the costs are too much to really, look at the benefits, and they say it's not worth it. This is where there's a complete reversal in the way people, take a decision to buy a new product. And we need to understand this, and this is where we start with the idea of saying that maybe I think we need to look at this whole process of consumer decision to buy a new product has to be looked at completely differently. And this is where I would like to now just start, have a few slides. The idea of this session is I would like to talk about this theory and what are the strategies that people will have to look at when they're going to launch a new product. Don't always look at it from the inventor's side, but you need to look at it from the consumer side. Quite often, most entrepreneurs make this fundamental mistake of looking at it from their own eyes and say, oh, this is my baby. I'm sure the entire world will love this particular baby. It's so cute. It's so wonderful. And they expect that everybody will start really appreciating that, and then they finally find that people don't even look at it. And this is where I think I'll just quickly go through a few slides. I hope this wire comes all the way here, or I don't know what happens now. Can I use a slide changer? Okay. Let me. I have to do a lot of acrobatics here. To just get this. Okay. Thanks, Aarti. This has been a great experience. Okay. I don't know. I hope I don't step on the wire. How do I change this? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. This is where as a few fundamental questions need to be asked by every entrepreneur. Why are consumers reluctant to buy seemingly attractive goods and services? These are all fantastic products. I'm sure, even in India also we come across people saying that, it's a wonderful service or a product, and, suddenly they get to the market and suddenly find there are no takers at all, right? Why developers fail to anticipate the reluctance to adopt? Again, we'll talk about it. From one side, you find consumers reluctant to adopt new products, and the innovators are not willing to look at why consumers don't buy. We don't want to focus on the dark side of it. We're always going with a lot of optimism, saying that things do work, and things are going to really become fantastic. Even investors believe in this, and they eventually launch the product, and you find that the market just failed to take on that particular product. What could be the strategies to increase the likelihood of new product introduction? I think, when I'm talking about a new product, I'm not really talking about a new to the world product. I'm sure there are entrepreneurs who are probably tinkered with existing products to make it a little more advanced in terms of features. Some could be between a breakthrough product and maybe a tinkering or something like that, where there could be some major changes in the product, but the benefits or the users are going to be similar. So here, when I'm talking about a new product, I'm essentially talking about a new product or a service an entrepreneur has launched in the market with the idea that it has better features and consumers are going to see the benefits of those. Right? It need not always be a breakthrough or a new to the world kind of products. This is what I'm trying to say. In fact, I would say a new product is nothing but a replacement of an incumbent product. There could be an existing service or a product, and this is likely to replace that and create a new market for this particular product. Right? Like I said, why consumers don't buy? In fact, studies have shown that quite often consumers are reluctant to buy new products. Even though some of the benefits looks very obvious, people just don't seem to take on. And it's a mystery. People till about 2002 people couldn't really figure out this particular conundrum. I mean, why, when there is an obviously wonderful product with all the benefits, there are economic benefits to be looked at, you can easily switch and still get a lot of benefits from the products, and people are not really willing to look at it. So people are not willing to look at the significant improvements that a new product offers or benefit it offers, and there are reasons behind this. Fundamental consumer bias arises due to irrational value attached to the downside of a particular product. In fact, people are focusing more on the downside of a new product and say, oh, it's going to cost me something. I mean, maybe in terms of effort, in terms of time, in terms of money, and then they look at the benefits and say, oh, the costs are too much, and I think the benefits are being outweighed by the costs, and we are not going to buy this. There's a fundamental bias in the consumers. I mean, I think, like you said, we are all averse to risks. Any new product which comes, especially the laggards, are the ones who will be the last one to take it, because they are going to see whether the rest of the world believes that it's a good product, and only then they take on. Even the innovators sometimes also think about the same thing. The idea is that people are not going to take a new product the minute it's launched in the market. They are going to obviously look at what are the costs and benefits, and they normally focus more on the costs rather than on the benefits. And believe me, I mean, in every new product which comes into the market has obviously some costs. Like, for instance, if you're switching to an electric car, for instance, the costs, what are the costs? I mean, if supposing I launch a new two-wheeler in the market, in fact, there is one electric scooter which has not really taken off very well in the market. Can somebody tell me the reasons why? Ma'am, I mean, Kiran, I mean, would you tell me why you wouldn't like to buy a two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler?
I think for the same reasons as the cost that I would pay for it.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether that is worth the risk that I would take of if that wouldn't work. Will that work or not? Will that be supported in terms of charging it every time? So for me, the charging expense I inflate, like Prospectia says. Whereas the benefit I am enticed to, but the cost of switching is, the risk is too much.
Right. Look at how people are looking at. The first thing that I say is, okay, I have got a scooter right now which runs on petrol. I don't
wait for my neighbor to actually do it.
Oh, sure. I know. And who's that neighbor? I don't know. I mean, that's the best part. I mean, we need to induce the neighbor first, and
talk about it. But
yeah.
When it comes to buying, I would think.
I know. Look at the very simple scooter that we are talking about. I mean, the benefits are obvious. I mean, you don't pollute the environment. It's probably going to be much cheaper, and so on. Yes, Mayur.
So this basically is something that we actually launched. The electric scooter is a concept vehicle that we built at DJ Sangvi College of Engineering, and the problem of marketing this was very simple. The first thing that when we went to people was a very simple question. If I am getting the same scooter which you are offering at 35,000, which is going to get me a drive at somewhere around 70 kilometers per hour, why would I drive your electric vehicle which is somewhere at 40 kilometers per
Absolutely.
hour? And it is going to take me somewhere around 2 or 3 hours of charging at a single port.
Right.
So our idea was, we were thinking of it from a green perspective, where we are thinking that petrol is going to be moving out and we are going to be working on the concept. And this concept, though works at a laggard level in India, China actually went forward and developed electric scooters, specifically lithium batteries, lipo batteries for it. It started creating cycleways. It started giving initiatives to companies who are working on these kind of systems. So we failed at a point where we had the product ready, we delivered it. Now, one of the ways we marketed to it was we went to a competition, basically Elecrama, which happens every year. Now, we did not get selected for it, but what we did was, we rather took the scooter and we just started driving around in the entire automation exhibition. People started noticing it. And then we got a funding from Mahindra, and Mahindra, you can work on this concept, and then we will fund it. So in a way, at the starting, nobody will accept your product.
Exactly. I think, this is a fundamental thing that we need to notice. What we think as an obvious benefit, like you must have seen, why are people not able to realize that it's much easier in terms of maintenance, it doesn't have too many moving parts, right? I mean, it's less polluting in the environment. probably even less noisy also. I mean, a lot of things that we assume as inventors, and we think that, the rest of the people also should look at the same thing in our own, perspective. I mean, it never happens. So the first question that a consumer asks, they start looking at the darker side and say, oh, what if I run out of charge? I remember, a friend of mine, in Delhi, every time they would stop near a signal, they start worrying about whether the power is going to last or not. And they start looking for whether there's an outlet where I can go charge this. You are so nervous. In a petrol vehicle, you feel you have the freedom, because in case you run out of gas, you can always go to the nearest gas station and have it filled. So the first thing that they say is, what if supposing, it goes out of charge? Where do we charge? Look at all the negative questions that people ask, because they say, if I'm going to spend so much of money, I don't think I can go long distances. I can't go fast. I can go at 70 kilometers per hour. Here I can go at the most at top speed of 40 kilometers. And then, so many other questions. In fact, they are looking at the downside of a new product rather than looking at the upside of that new product in terms of benefits. Now, this is a fundamental thing that we need to notice, that inventors look at the brighter side and the consumers look at the darker side. Yeah, Radhi.
See, very often what entrepreneurs tend to do is that they give you free samples. Okay, so what happens is that maybe the adoption is there for a certain period of time, but then that in turn may get me other customers, right?
It does. I'm not trying to say that all the products fail only because of this theory, but this is one of the major reasons. Once we know that this is going to happen, then we can plan our strategies. What you said is absolutely right. Once we know that the adoption process is not going to be automatic, people are not going to just jump at new products and start looking at all the benefits, then I think we are now able to sort of understand that not all products are right away, the typical home runs that we talk about. We'll talk about it. The minute you introduce a product, they become instant hits, blockbusters.